Okay, everybody, hide your wives, hide your kids, and hide your husbands too, because we are here with another video. Okay, so since it is the beginning of a new school year and people tend to have a lot of anxiety and depression about it, well, let's have your boy talk about it firsthand with experience in that area. Okay, so freshman year, I was super depressed, and it was because people would always like talk about me, harass me, and just bully me, and like prank call me and stuff like that. And people before that had always talked about me, like picked on me, and it never got under my skin. But for some reason, it was on a much larger scale because I guess it was a bigger school. It with it being high school, and it really did get to me. And then I got depressed over it, and I was already dealing with other issues like body dysmorphia and not feeling comfortable in my own skin. And so that really just added on to it. There was a lot of highs and lows during freshman year, but there were mainly lows, and they were low lows. And it made me not want to get up out of the bed and do anything. And I'm a very energetic person. I like to get stuff done, be on task, and I just could not. And it did get to the point where I looked in the mirror in the bathroom and the thought came into my head, what if I just ended it all? And it made me happy, the thought of it. And then I realized, like, no, that's not okay. And so I was like, okay, like this, I would never do that in my right mind. So I was like, you know what, I gotta go get help. And then a couple days after that, we were on the way to school, me and my mom. My mom was driving, and I remember this like it was yesterday, and I was just so over it. And I was just looking out the window, and my mom was driving, and like she could just pick up the energy that I was putting off. And I just started, tears just started coming out my eyes like crazy, and like I wasn't making any noises or anything. Then she looked over at me like, what's wrong? And then I just spilled the whole thing, and then went to the doctor and the therapist, and she was like, yeah, I can tell, like, you are a very lively person and you are being drugged down really hard. And so it did affect me, to say the least, and especially in school. And it was like I had put on a mask every day, and I didn't show it. Nobody knew I was going through anything. Like I told my mom, and she took it as a shock because I had that front. I'm not very open about anything. And so I had up my wall, and I didn't let anyone come in, and I never really spoke to anyone about it. And then the therapist was like, okay, well, I'll refer you to someone who can prescribe you with additional therapies. And I was like, yes, I'll try anything to make this work. And so she was like, okay, but it's going to have to be a month. And I was like, a month? I already had to wait a month to get into the therapist. But I was like, you know what? Okay. It was the worst month of my life, but you know what? There was light at the end of the tunnel. So I just toughed it out another month, even though it was getting worse and worse. And so then they put me on Wellbutrin, which is an antidepressant. And it made me jittery and like hyper and like all over the place and just like lively again. But it wasn't like myself lively. It was like I felt it still deep down, but I wasn't as aware of it, And then they kept upping the dosage until it was like I was back to normal almost. But it wasn't back to normal. It gave me so much anxiety. And so I was like, you know what? I can't do this anymore. Like, the anxiety was way too bad. And so I stopped taking it. I weaned myself off of it. And then junior year rolled around. And I guess the pressure of it being your most important year of high school which I find to be bullcrap, because if you ask me, freshman and sophomore year are the most important for your GPA. I just had like anxiety attacks on anxiety attacks on anxiety attacks. I was just running myself ragged, and it was honestly horrible. Like it felt like someone was like squeezing inside of my chest and ready to just rip out my diaphragm and heart. It was horrible. I mean, I would never wish that on anyone, like not even my worst enemies. And it was honestly horrible. And so I went to the doctor again, and she was like, okay, like just sitting down, I can tell you're a very anxious person. And I was like, how so? And so she told me, she's like, by the way you're sitting, you're tense, you're very keen on everything that's happening. Your appearance is immaculate. Like every time you come in here is like pristine. And I was like, okay. And so she and her superior doctor, boss kind of thing, they started throwing me questions left and right. And so it was a series of questions. Like it was a good 10 minutes of just nothing but questions. And so like they came to the conclusion, they were like, okay, you definitely have general anxiety. I'm like, duh, I could have told you that one. And then second was social anxiety, which I kind of thought I had, but I wasn't sure. And it's not like approaching people and talking to them, or talking to strangers in like the store, like your clerk or like checkout person. And so, I mean, that does not bother me at all. Like, I don't mind that. But it's just like giant crowds when I'm in like the chaos and everything. That's when I tend to not like it. Then they were like, okay, you also have almost every symptom of OCPD. And a lot of people aren't aware of what OCPD is. It's not OCD. OCPD is overcompulsive personality disorder, and what OCD is overcompulsive disorder. So the difference between OCD is that people tend to say or do tasks that make them feel comforting to them. So in extreme cases, people with OCD will like wash their hands because they're a germaphobe, and it will like literally make their hands bleed. That's not OCPD. OCPD is a personality disorder. So you want things done a certain way. Like, for example, in a group project, you don't want anyone else working on the project. You take over the entire project because you want it done the right way. You want it done your way. But I wasn't like, oh my God, you're not good enough, you know. I just wanted the grade. I wanted it done right, so I knew it would not be messed up, because people tend to slack or not do it. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna make sure it gets done. Everybody gets the good grade, you know. So, and with anxiety, my general anxiety, it was triggered by school and like how I was trying to get the grades I wanted and trying to do good on this one test, you know. That one test does not make or break your high school career or college career. It's honestly irrelevant almost. It's important, but it's not supposed to be irrational, you know, for your anxiety. And that's what my anxiety was. My anxiety was very irrational. And so what I did was they put me on Lexapro, which is an anxiety medicine. And so it calmed me down. It made me not care about anything. It honestly just made you just chill out and not care. You didn't give a crap about anything. And so I couldn't focus either. And it affected my school and my grades. And my grades started to drop. And I was like, okay, like I need to bring my grade up in math. I could not do it to save my life. I just could not do it. Like I pay attention. I try to focus, but the gears were just clicking in my head. And I pick up on math extremely easy. Like I excel in math and science. Those are my two where I'm like A1 in. And it was not hot at all. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to have to take the L on this one. and wean myself off, and I did. And then the anxiety, when I was on that medicine, it must have like built up, and when I started weaning myself off of it, it just came for me. It punched me in the face, and I honestly had the worst anxiety attacks, and they were so frequent too. My anxiety was worse in the morning when I woke up for school, and I would never have one at school. If I did, it was rare. And so the biggest one I had was in first period, and after I had already had an anxiety attack that morning, and it was probably one of the worst ones I had. I almost started hyperventilating, like I was starting to cry because it hurt so bad and I was so uncomfortable, and I felt like everybody was staring at me. Nobody was paying attention to me. They didn't care what I was doing or what I was going through. They probably didn't even know. And so it honestly was horrible. Like I almost got up and left and went to the guidance office. And what I started to do to ease my anxiety was I told myself, okay, what you feel right now, that's your fear of whatever it is irrational. You are fine. You are not in any danger. Everything is going to be okay. Take care of the situation. Handle it. Address it. It's going to be okay. It is irrational. The anxiety attack will pass in a couple minutes as long as you don't stress out even more about it. And so that's what I started doing. And especially with the OCPD symptoms, I found I was more aware of my tendencies after they had been addressed, and they had subsided for the most part, because like it's like, okay, that's just me. I need to check myself before I wreck myself, So I did. And with the depression was that situation, the medicine, it helped, but what really helped my depression was I do not focus on the negatives when you have depression. Like when you have depression, you're like, oh, it's rainy outside, or oh, I don't feel like getting up, or blah, blah, blah. Like, cut the crap. Like, think of everything you are grateful for. Think about what your family is there for, or if you don't have good family, think about any kind of financial income or anything you have going for you. Think about that, and it will almost immediately go away. You'll perk up almost immediately, and that's what you have to think about. And especially, all right, so with school depression, think about your intellectual capability. Think about how gifted you are, and take advantage of it. Use it to your advantage, and definitely just push forward. It is temporary. That is the biggest thing I can tell you. It is temporary. And with anxiety tends to be irrational. In most cases, it is. My school extremely harsh on curriculum and the courses. The average courses were like honors at a different school, and it was honestly brutal. It really was, and that's why almost 2/3 of my class or entire school was medicated, whether it be depression, anxiety, ADHD, ADD, like they were medicated. 2/3, I can confidently tell you they were medicated. And so, yeah, I know it's harsh, and medications tend not to be the best solution. If it is your last resort, I understand that. But the side effects of most of those drugs and prescriptions, they are insane. And so, like my depression medicine, they were like, okay, do you have any family that has had a history with seizures, or have you had seizures? I'm like, no. And the big thing about that medicine was seizures, but I never had one, thank God. But yeah, you just always, if you do take medication, be aware of what you're taking. Do your research. My medication that I took for depression, Wellbutrin, it's literally, the street name for it is the poor man's Coke. So it literally is. It's like a pot of coffee that lasts all day long. It is legal Coke, pretty much. And so, but with school starting back up, You'll get through it, I promise. You got this. I know I needed to hear all of this whenever I was going through my crap. And with ADHD and ADD, just bring yourself in. I know it's hard, and just set your mind on a task, complete it. Because I have been diagnosed with ADHD, and so thank God that ADD and ADHD people have the ability to hyper focus. It's not a proven fact, of course, but whenever you do set your mind on something, you get it done, and you focus on that until you're absolutely happy with it, or get it out of the way. And if you do need to do this, turn your phone off, put it away, put any distractions away, go into a different room than with electronics. Just go in silence or listen to some calm, chill music, just vibe and do your homework. It's pretty easy to do, honestly, but yeah. And then for depression and anxiety, I promise you it does get better. Just alter your mindset. That is all you have to do. Depression, think about what you have going for. Be positive, surround yourself with positive people, because you are who you surround yourself with. And if you surround yourself with negative people, you will pick up that tendency. And push out positive energy, because you will receive greater positive energy than you put out there. And then anxiety, rationalize it. Rationalize. Come back to earth. Calm down. It is okay. I promise you. Unless you have PTSD or something, that's a whole different story. But I promise you, it is okay. It's irrational. Ring it in. It'll be all right. So I hope this helped a few of y'all. And I know I needed to hear this whenever I was going through my crap. And so I hope it really did help some of y'all. And if y'all want to see more of me aside from YouTube, follow my Instagram and Snapchat, which will be right down here. And give this video a comment. Let me know if you have any tips or tricks that you had whenever you are going through something like this. And leave a like and subscribe. Thanks, y'all.